So welcome everyone to Verified Release UX bi-weekly meeting. And yeah, there are a couple of read-only items, mostly about the upcoming times off. So go through that. Yeah, and jumping into the discussion items area, we have our, your stage group area is empty. I'm not sure if anyone wants to share anything specific happening in their stage group that we didn't add to the agenda. Okay, let's jump to the process stuff. Dimitri, your point is first.
All right, let me see. So I put this in before I took my flight. So let me see. General concept of an issue for engineering waiting requested by PM. Like how do you, let me think how to phrase this. Engineer or a product management ideally wants like all of the issues pre-weighted. However, you know, of course, it's hard to weight something if it's not really clear what, you know, the eventual concept of or solution will be. And there's this kind of like a balance between, you know, can you indicate something, because that is what weighting ideally is, instead of like actually, you know, saying what exactly goes in or the amount of effort that goes in, versus like, now how do we meet in the middle? That's what I'm trying to say. So my initial question would be, do you weigh issues in your stage group, and if so, how and why? And mostly we'll be targeting Juan in this case.
Yeah, I guess it's only Juan. I think I've seen Fiona play some comments. But...
So is your question whether my groups are weighting UX efforts or not?
Yes, and how does this correlate with engineering weighting?
Got it. Okay, so like the short answer is we don't weight. We just when I get together with my PMs, we look at the engineering effort, and then we know that those ones are weighted, and we know those, like the time that they're gonna take. But I think we kind of eyeball what's gonna take. I mean, we never set those weights. I think it's just like implicit that we know that this design is gonna take half of the release or like several cycles of the release, but it's never communicated. And I'm not saying that that's good at all. It's probably a failure of the process. I think it should be documented somewhere, and I definitely want to do that. Like, I have been trying to communicate expectations of bandwidth and like the amount of work that I have on one group, so like the other PM can see and plan against that. I have been trying to organize that a little bit more. But yeah, I just wanted to be honest and say that we're not waiting anything, and we're not really, we're basically eyeballing those efforts and kind of like having that in the back of the mind, you know, like again, I'm not saying that that's good. That's probably very bad, but that's the reality, and I wanted to be honest.
Let me ask a slightly different but related question in that sense.
Okay.
You ever come across the situation where engineering wants to weigh an issue where this, like, where the problem statement is not such a good place that, you know, you can say for certain that, you know, something will be so much worth. Like, for example, some issues might initially look like, oh, we're gonna tackle this issue, and eventually it ends up being an epic because it's such a huge thing that it needs to be broken down in multiple sub issues, and only one of those sub issues will be, you know, put in like a single milestone.
Right. That's a great question. I think that happens, but not that often. And that's probably merit of the PMs that are pretty good at, you know, PMs and engineering managers. I think they're pretty good at, I think that has happened like once in Runner, that we were thinking about this particular issue, and then we realized that okay, there's actually many things, underlying things, and we need to break down into multiple issues. And then we ended up with like 4 different issues. But that didn't impact me because the design was always the same. I maybe had to do like brief iterations. So like basically what that means is the weight of the engineering effort volume, or like kind of like increases in volume, but I think the design effort, it only changes when the requirements start to change, and I don't know that until someone comes and say like, hey, we cannot do that, or can we export this other thing or whatever. So it's very ad hoc, I will say. It's very hard to do it just when we decide that we are going to split the issue.
Okay.
So do you guys ever? Oh, go ahead, Dimitri.
No, I was just thanking you for instance.
Yeah, and I kind of am thinking out loud too. So the way that we do weighting here is really odd to me, especially in the research team. We don't talk about the weights that we give things. We have no shared understanding of the weights that we give things. And you're never supposed to use a weight that one team gives something to give that weight to another team. That team has to come up with their own weight for it, because it's very group contextual. So it's very weird. That's just really what I wanted to say. Especially from my Scrum and Agile training that I've gone through, it's just odd the way that we do it, and it doesn't make any sense, because we don't even have user stories. Like, we don't break it down, we don't talk about it. It's just a thing, like Juan says, we have to put a number there because we're going to hand it off to somebody else, but that number is not going to mean the same thing to them. So I don't understand why we're doing that.
I guess it's also important here, if I may add my 20 cents, is because our estimation of the UX work is a little bit, well, and correct me if you don't agree, but it's a little bit different from the estimation of the engineering work, because we are,
yes.
Like, I would say, if we would ask ourselves, why do we as a product designers estimate our work? The only one reason probably, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have other reasons, that would be to communicate our capacity or velocity per milestone as a product designer to product management or to the team. So if that's the reason, we don't even, like, I would ask ourselves, do we even need to be aligned? And like, I would say the estimation should be then clear to the PM and the product designer. And it could be in the way they are, comfortable with that. Let me pause here for a second.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So, and Dimitri, coming back to your question, I think so. You are asking, like, what I've heard from you is the fact that, like, when we have those situations when the problem is not 100% clear, and then we are going into a little bit of a research, try to understand the problem better, and then we understand, okay, this is not a fly, but it's a whole elephant to solve. And then the issue grows from an issue to an epic. And like, I would say, like what Juan says, it almost doesn't happen in their team. I'm really happy to hear that. My answer would be, it should almost never happen as well. I understand there will be cases when, like, we cannot avoid this. Sometimes, like, we cannot know everything, but yeah, like, and this is where we are trying to, like, work around the process right now. And like, I think we will be doing better there soon, because I feel like we're doing quite some work with Tao around alignment and the processes. So that should not happen. And like, I here also posted the URL for the UX definition of done that I would like to propose, starting with CI. I know it actually was taken by inspiration from release management, from what Hayana and Jackie have started working from. And the first thing, it's for like, for the issue that is about to move to the design workflow, it's that problem was validated and understood. So it's already kind of like, yeah, that would not be checked for the case that we are talking here about.
Yeah, I mean, like the request came from product management, like or it said like, hey, I want us to be in a state ideally where I have all my issues engineering weighted. I said, but hey, if an issue is engineering weighted, then it should be considered to some extent done from a UX perspective, because otherwise, how can engineering know what they implement? Sorry?
100%, yes.
Yeah, and then she says, like, she stated, like, yes, I understand, but we should be like that's coming back to that kind of eyeball thing. And like it was an unfinished discussion. Like I mainly put it here to see how other stage groups did their weighting or not. I mean, there was no good or right answer here, or good or bad answer. It was mostly getting a little bit of inspiration, and also to ask the question like, hey, does your PM require or ask of you for engineering to weigh issues that are like not in any way having that definition of done to some extent, right? Like, and this comes down as well. Like, hey, if we have if we have an engineering team, and the engineering team that consists out of, like, for example, 4 engineers or 5 engineers, and there's only one product designer to back them up, and in order for engineering to weigh those issues, then they need to be in some extent of UX done. You know, we're gonna walk across like what is more important, working on the issues or rating them, and I think working on the issues is more important.
Yes, yes. And I was wondering, do we ever have a conversation with engineering where the whole purpose is for design to communicate to engineering what has been designed, why, and engineering to weigh in on, oh, that's going to need this, and I'm going to need to go research that, and okay, I think this might be, you know, done this way. And then in that conversation, let engineering actually weight what they understand about that design issue in terms of their effort right there. Because I wonder if that's not taking place and we're just kind of handing it over and they're having to understand it from their perspective.
I think you hit on a good point there. I would think I would love to see the workflow being that engineering weights issues in the process of design and working on them, and not that design comes in because engineering cannot weight an issue because the issue is unclear, right?
Right, exactly. Because it's a partnership. Yeah.
My groups do that, but it's never like, it's not a consistent thing in the sense that it's not something that we have every time that there's designs we meet and we discuss them. Like usually it seems that we need to talk about these and then we get together and we talk about it, you know, but it's very random. It's not a process. It's not something like that. It's usually just when the design is ready and there's gaps in the understanding, then we get together and then we talk about it. And then, but yeah, coming back to the original question, I don't know. I think like no one's really waiting consistently, you know, not for engineering and definitely not for UX. So I feel that there's something missing there, perhaps. I think this is a good discussion. I just don't have the answer.
We have Kayana also joined. Sorry, Kayana, I didn't see that you've been knocking. This annoying feature. I think I'm not sure if you're following what we're discussing. Let me know if you are not, but I would love to hear your perspective on this. Let me know if you need to repeat the question.
So you folks are talking about the UX weighting, right? Versus engineering weighting, and if that works or not. And okay, cool. If I can give my 2 cents on that, it doesn't work for UX because too many variables. For the engineers, it's weight 1, it's 1 merge request. Weight 2 is 2 merge requests, whatever. And I'm not sure if this was already discussed, but to me, what works and what helps is to make it visible which design tasks I need to complete in order to close that each issue, like to move from the UX workflow. And that's how I weight. If that's going to take a week, 2 months, or 2 days, that really depends on how small the issue is or how I'm collaborating with the team, if it's synchronously, asynchronously, etc. So I'm not up to date with the conversation, but those are my initial 2 cents.
Thanks for that, Rayana. I looked at your the original issue that I think put in here at 21. And do you still question 1? Do you still work with that definition of done list? All right. And 2, if I look at that definition of done, even though it is like you become more, make it more visible. That is what I really like about it. But if I look at, for example, criteria for UX done, it says, all right, UX label added, user stories, edge cases were confirmed. And then it pretty quickly goes towards a state where apparently suddenly you have a solution. There's a lot of work between defining that solution. There's sometimes you might have 1 to 2 iterations of a little model, and then you're done at that solution. You get at the ideal solution because it was kind of obvious, and you're just figuring out some minor details. And then there's other places where before you get to that state, you went through 13, 14 iterations. You have to ask, you have to look back. That is not really visible in a single task in a list. That little task can be huge, or it can be a little mouse, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why for these cases where, for example, something that we consider UX ready, where I created user stories and prototypes, whatever, once it goes to planning breakdown, for some reason, there's a change in scope, right? There's a change in technology or whatever. Then it goes back to the design workflow. And then that task that, I just checked as in, I don't know, marked as ready for engineering evaluation or has user stories, I'm just going to rework on those pieces that are missing in the story. And for us, at least that's what works for release management. And that's also what's reflected here, is that because we are constantly iterating on something, on the issues, sometimes I'm not even working on the UX definition of them. Jackie is already validating the problem here and talking to customers, and I'm already doing some low fidelity prototyping, and then the engineers are on the side working on validating some things on the API. Then at some point, we know that we have the pieces of the story. And then, we look back at the UX DOD and say, okay, we have initial user stories, we have the criteria, let's work on that. So for us, it's granular to a certain extent. That's what you see in this DOD, because we don't follow this clear path, right? As designers, at least my experience in GitLab is that it's very difficult to just start here and end there. That's why it's a bit open, because sometimes I start working on the UX DOD and then the issue is removed from the milestone. So it's a very...
I hear what you say. It seems like the working ahead thing, because it's what you said, you're way ahead, and because of that you have that buffer to hey, if we don't get to it now, then we'll get to it later. Oh, we can put in some problem validation in between, no problem. However, that keeps being a theme in other stage groups where, hey, we know this only being now, and we need to work on implementation issues that are the clock is ticking. We don't have that leisure, and it seems very hard to get out of that place, because that seems to be the recurring theme every time these things come up. Hey, we only have this amount of time to work on this. We will be stuck at some point, and we will have to make concessions.
Yeah, and I think that's why it works for us, because we are so ahead of the UX and PM. I'm talking with Jackie about things that don't have milestones assigned. Maybe 13.6, maybe, I don't know. It's just the vision for the CI/CD dashboard. We need to decide.
I can honestly say that is unimaginable for both CI and PM.
I know, it is.
So it's a luxury. But so just to wrap up, I think that what works for us, and that's what I see really reflected on how we apply the UX DOD and how I work on these items, is that I know that, for example, Jackie is going to follow up with an item that it's in the direction and the vision page for release orchestration. There are no surprises there, unless there is a big change, in the, I don't know, the market or with our customers. But we validate our problems so much that we know that we are working on secrets management, and that we have to work on this, and that. And that's where the backlog comes from. So I don't think it's a UX DOD is going to solve that problem, for UX and PMs. That's it.
No, that's super useful, kind of what you're saying. And I'm afraid to say it out loud, but maybe I shouldn't. But like Nadia is thinking. So let me try to put it like in this way. So to me, it seems like it really depends on the product manager, right? And some people are really like to work like really ahead, right? And like this is what I'm curious, like, I'm not sure if Dimitri, you or Reed, for example, will even ever be working on 13.6. I do not know. So maybe we have to be experimenting until we will find, the way how to, come up with our own definition of done, or like of those techniques and methodologies that would help us to get just enough to move forward. And of course, trying to get a little bit ahead, but seeing how that will go. And what I also have seen from Hayana, from some of your, for example, issues, that we don't necessarily need to have the full ready UX and work, mock-ups, descriptions, I know whatever we deliver UX in order for engineering to give an estimation of the weighting. You can I think what I've seen you can often do, you kind of just describe whatever is this feature gonna result into at this point of time, and then it gives them enough information to do an estimate. We don't have to be super clear about those estimations at that point of time. I think from the engineering as well, it's just to get a approximate understanding.
Yeah, because with us, we're constantly discussing things in different channels, right? So you have the ThinkPic sessions, you have Slack, you have the issue comments, whatever. And when I post a design proposal, it's not going to be the source of truth, right? They're still going to look at it and then discuss can we break this down into something smaller? Can we not use a pajama component? Can we do this, this, and that? And then after, I think that's what we all do, you update the description. But sometimes, most of the times, because I'm not also creating big changes to the UI, I have, it's a luxury as well to say, I don't need to, work on prototypes, because I can describe to them what's going to change, and they're just going to work on top of that. But I try to do the bare minimum in the issue, as in delivering assets, because I know that these are going to change. I know that another team is working on whatever component, or that there's a migration, whatever, and I don't want to work on prototypes. So I don't, only if it's really, really necessary. But also my team, they're very design-minded. So I know that Nathan is going to prototype something for me so that I can validate. He works on, the guys, they have a Sketch, they have Balsamiq. So they're gonna come and ask, is this the right component? Is this placed correctly? So like what Nadia was saying, I think it really depends on the team and the type of dynamics.
Yeah, this is what I really see working with different teams. I'm not saying that we should not be trying, or not should be trying to be an ideal spot, but just saying that probably expectations will be different and reality will be different. Yeah. Hey, I would like to propose to move on to the next topic. If we feel like we need more discussions on this, let's open up an issue and have maybe involve even cross-stage people, because Dimitri, I know that Maria in ops, a lot of designers are doing putting weights on the issues. I'm not sure how their weighting collaborates to the engineering workflow, but yeah, maybe that's also an interesting path for us to investigate. Dimitri, I think this one was also yours, right? What are your or this is related to the same topic? What are your processes?
I think so. I think this is part of the same.
Is it part of the same, you think?
Yeah, it's part of the same.
Awesome. Okay, then I'm moving on to my item, which is the next. So it's actually somehow related, and I don't want to get it too much time right now for discussion, because there is a lot of things to read. And basically, I would like to get your feedback on this issue that I've created, summarizing some of the challenges that I observed from some of the stage groups. It's very related to what Dimitri just now said, and maybe some additional points on that. There is quite some text, so it's kind of like an point, hey, go in, check in, and leave me some thoughts and feedbacks if you'll be feeling like that. Dimitri, next, over to your point.
Oh, yeah, thanks. In terms of recording, planning, kickoff videos, I was wondering when your PM says you can record it, like when did you record it? Did you record it on the 16th or did you record it like a week before or even 2 weeks? If so, why and how does it relate to any spillover from like last milestone? I have had the comments from PM like, hey, we cannot do this recording unless we know the spillover, and the spillover is only known until the last second. So this kind of like, in terms of like recording this kickoff video together with PM, this leaves only a very small window to do so. If somebody's out of office, hello, then it makes it very hard to record that video. So I was wondering how others tackle that, or are, you know, what their process is.
I'm going to voice my comment here that we recorded at the end of the current milestone. But yeah, the planning was already there. So like what I said before, we already knew what's going to be delivered. And like when you mentioned like the spillovers, that we didn't even mention those, the things that, you know, are gonna, like the things that carry over from 13.1 to 13.2, we didn't even mention those. It's really like new items and UX items that, like for engineering, and UX items that kind of follow the product vision, that meet the direction. And we did record together, Jackie and I, but there was also a proposal there to do it separately. So I'll just record my part, but yeah, we ended up doing it together. I think that could also work if we don't, like out of office, or the UX planning is ready, but the other part is not.
Yeah, it was like a small comment in before we go to Juan's point. I like thanks for that. I understand the point of like not mentioning the spillover. It's not about mentioning the spillover. It's more about that spillover will take up capacity of any new items going into current milestone, yes or no. So depending on that spillover, if it's a lot, then hey, those new issues we wanted to talk about will actually not be delivered in current milestone. Thus, we cannot talk about it. That is kind of like the problem, what spillover creates.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it did happen in this one for me. We actually had spillover, but what we did, I mean, at least what I did was just like talking about spillover as it's not a spillover. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, we're just gonna be working on this. So I mean, it's kind of weird, but it can happen that in 2 consecutive releases you are talking about the same thing, and I think that's fine. I don't know, Nadia maybe has thoughts on that, but what I'm saying is like, let's say like this release, you say UX is gonna be working on creating group coverage graphs on blah blah blah, and it's gonna be doing this issue and this issue, and then you work on that a little bit and you do a lot of stuff and you do research, and but nothing gets quite done because there's competing priorities and whatever. And then in the next one, it happens that you need to push that same issue to the next one. Then you talk about the same one and you maybe mention that you did the progress that you did on that one. But I personally feel it's okay to mention the same issue in the next one. Does that make sense? What I just said?
Thanks, Matt.
Nadia, do you have thoughts on that?
So I just want to clarify, Dimitri, am I understanding this correctly? So you're saying, for example, that we cannot record the video until almost to the release date to understand what things are going to miss the milestone and move on from this milestone to the next one. Oh.
Exactly.
And it sounds like that's a tradition, or what? Like,
yeah, this happens every milestone, because like engineering will not be able to complete all the things that went into that milestone. Thus it will take up additional time in the next milestone, which like this kind of like, this is the thing that like, if we wouldn't account for that, then we could record that meeting way in advance, like no problem.
But it also happens automatically, right? Once it's past certain date, it gets that tag, that label that says miss 13.1 or 13.2 or whatever. So you don't even need to be like fully aware of what's going on. Like there's I don't know what's the deadline or like the basically what's the
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's really
like
close until the 18th. Like it's like the 15th or the 14th or something that
yeah.
happened.
Yeah. So our product development workflow says that we should have all of the items that are going into the release. What is that? Week ready before that? But it sounds like you're having it a week after, pretty much. I mean, like I think my opinion, and I may be wrong here, maybe I'm missing some data, but I think we should not be having a dependency here because those things should be known a bit more upfront. I don't know, this is a little bit weird. Maybe we need to look into that more often. Hayana, you probably don't have have you heard of this with Jackie?
Can you repeat the last part,
Like,
Nadia?
do you ever, do you often work with spillovers or like in the release management? Like, do you,
Not,
that-
I mean, engineering, yes. So we have all the time that, yeah, something is not delivered because, and then it carries over to the next milestone, but the UX is ready. So what happens that Jackie mentions, yeah, we're going to continue working on making possible to add releases to the UI. And then that's it, we're delivering the item, but the UX is ready. So that doesn't affect my capacity. It might affect the capacity of developers being able to work on new items, but because they already have, they are assigned to items that I'm grooming or that we are validating, it doesn't really affect my bandwidth and my workload because they have to, you know, groom things with me anyways. Otherwise, I will be doing nothing.
Yeah, I think it's important to like I think we're slightly misaligned in terms of like what we're like. The idea here is like when can we record the kickoff video, and does or does not spillover from last milestone affect what we will put into that kickoff meeting? And I mean the kickoff meeting for PM will mean what engineering is working on, and then because it's a collaboration, it will now also include what UX will be working on. I totally understand that for UX, it has no effect, right? Spillover, we don't care, we work on the next thing. Yeah. However, for engineering, it does. So when PM wants to record and say what's in the next milestone, what engineering will be implementing, that is like, what I get is that release management doesn't have no effect for that. Like, can for release management, can Jackie record the video like 2 weeks in advance, no problem, and spillover will not affect what engineering will be working on next milestone? Or
like what we already know. Yeah, we already know. Oh, sorry, not what Juan said. We already know what's going to be a spillover, right? So, for example, I just linked here the planning issues for 13.2 that was open 3 weeks ago, and also the needs weight issue. So everything, it's very clear to what issues that we need engineers to be grooming, what issues are going to miss milestone, so it affects, but we know ahead of time. So that's why for us, there's this confidence to record the video 2 weeks ahead of time.
So you say like, hey, 2 weeks in advance, at the end of the milestone, engineering will say towards product management, all right, these issues we will not complete.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the 2 weeks, but there is we check everything weekly. And also I think they're implementing a new process to make daily or weekly updates on the issue, as like leaving a comment saying like, this is the status of this issue or this merge request by the end of this week or by the end of the day. So we keep like a lot of track in the, yeah.
Because that is interesting. That was exactly what I was wondering about. Like, hey, can engineering say earlier, like the spillover in terms of PD is like last of the last moment, and apparently it can be done differently, right?
But this is what is exactly engineering estimation capacity and capacity and milestone. How do you say? Jesus, forgot the other word. Anyway, this is what all of these agile frameworks are for providing the clear numbers of how much work is going into the milestone. So for me, it is a bit surprising. We're waiting until the last moment. It's like, yeah, can we do this another bit or not?
But I don't think that happens, like at least in testing, now that I'm thinking about it, like every week when we meet, we say, are we confident that this is going to ship in this release? and then they say like yes or no, or maybe, or like maybe this part, or maybe we need to break this apart, whatever. Like there's the discussion happens, right? But I think we're pretty aware of what's gonna
Yeah.
make it to the release and whatnot,
I think,
because we're
Dimitri, this
talking about it weekly.
focus on like the estimation and the planning, and maybe we have to discuss this with a read and maybe involve some of the other product managers to, like, you know, for some best practices or tips, because it again comes back to the question of planning. And I'll definitely know this for myself, so we'll look into this deeper
Yeah.
as well.
I'll bring it up in the, do you think the engineering meeting or the UXPM meeting would be the best fit? Because I think it would be ideal to have engineering managers in there.
Sure. Yeah, why not? Let's bring it up in the team.
Quickly, one thing that we also do is that we create sometimes epics just to, you know, bundle those issues that are kind of that are just belong to the same iteration, or not same iteration, but for example, make releases beautiful and easy to use. So you have the 3 UX dev issues linked in an epic, so that we have the visualization of those are the 3 things that need to be delivered, right? And then you see the merge requests. So I think there are also ways for us to track this and help the PMs or engineering managers, whatever, to have this visualization. Because if we know that there are some items that they're carrying over, they're spilling over to other milestones, how can we make this visible to them? Or how can they make visible for themselves without having to ask all the time the developers? Because I remember working in progressive deliveries, that was a very big problem, as in the PM doesn't have an overview of what's happening and what can be delivered and what, you know, it's missing the milestone. So if you have it in one place, then you know, and then you can check with the team rather than waiting for them to come give you the feedback.
Oh, my notes are, sorry guys for the mess up. My Google Docs is just so slow. I don't know why. Good point.
All right,
thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, we may be maybe we'll come to Jackie for some tips and tricks. Let's talk about this also, Dimitri, with you to follow up. Next item, I think you're Dimitri's.
Damn, I got a lot of items. I'm so sorry.
You're the fire.
Let me see. Let's see if we can quickly go through this one. I noticed the CS monthly engineering meeting to go over tech debt. How about we doing this cross-functionally for UX debt? I thought it might be interesting. Just an idea. Just wondering what thoughts are. Not intending to speak in half an hour about this. That's mainly the point. So what are the upsides if we would discuss in like a monthly meeting the UX debt, the UI polish across our stages? Is that a good idea or a bad idea? And if so, why? Go on, you're at the first point, I see.
Sure, just give me 1 second here.
Keeping you all focused. Sorry.
Where are we? Sorry, I was just like replying to.
No worries. So Dimitri is saying that in CI engineering team, they have a meeting to go over the technical debt, and he's proposing.
Oh, got it. Yeah, now I remember. So can we do this async? That was my only comment.
I think we potentially can, but like, is there value in doing this cross-functionally, you think, or not?
Well, I mean, I definitely see a lot of value in this, because otherwise it's kind of hard to understand where. I mean, the tech debt one, the way that I understand it is that it brings attention to the engineering team about what's important to start fixing when it comes to tech debt. You know, it just basically allows them to shift attention to things that are creating other issues. So I think I see it the same way, right? Like it's if we can get together and discuss them and see how we can, like, if fixing those issues is going to help us unblock other issues or solve like major cross-functional, cross-team problems. I definitely see the merit in doing it. I just was wondering if we could do it asynchronously, but I think the value is there. I would definitely love to have something to discuss. If it's synchronously, that works well. I'm just saying that I think it's helpful in either format.
Yeah, for me, I also think we can try to sync and then see what needs to be modified, especially that if something's cross-functional, it's not just, it depends on the size of the issue. And if we can fix ourselves, fine. But if it needs to be scheduled, then yeah, you need to bring PMs, and it really depends on if it meets the current direction and the items that are being scheduled. But for release management, I keep track of all UX depth and UI polishing in Epic. And then we do have items that they are cross-stage, but then they only enter our planning if they, like what I say, they meet our little plan. So for example, we have, we're gonna work on secrets and splitting secrets from CI variables. So there's a bunch of issues and UX depth, bugs or whatever, that they touch the settings page, right? So at some point, we're gonna have to address that. So it'll be interesting to have a conversation about this specific topic. But yeah, it really depends how big those items are.
I see your question as well, Nadia. Do you think having such an issue for each stage? Yes and no. What I've always found hard to understand, which has also been why I've been working with the Needs UX review epic differently than I think that Nadia has. Because Nadia, in the Needs UX review epic, I know this is going on a tangent, but just for a small bit, you are adding the issues towards that epic, right? Like as a child issue towards that epic. Ayana?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was writing.
In the Needs UX review epic, you add those issues towards that epic, right? Like as a child issue.
Yeah, so these are all added to this epic. So they don't really have a category. Those are just the release management, UX depth and UI polish. But we do have some items that are depth and polish. Actually, let me show you bugs from environments bugs that are in a specific bucket. So
yeah, because like the thing I'm getting at is like, what is the use of epics versus labels, right? Like if we need a bucket, we already have one. In like, for example, we are like in PD and CI, I've been trying really hard to get, everything triaged. And in that way, you can more easily get them scheduled in because you can see like, hey, out of all our issues, we are, gaining on them. We're getting like our number is rising, as well as like, hey, we can see which numbers are, for example, severity 2 or severity 1 or severity 3. And like, based on that, we can more easily make the case to get them scheduled in a way.
yeah.
While for an epic, an epic is more like, as I see it, like I understand you can use it as a bucket, but it like an epic should have a meaning towards like it's a variable, like a variable scope, but it is set to a certain, like it needs to solve something in a limited time span, whatever that time span is, right?
Yes and no. I think if you assign the dates and the milestone, not milestone, but the date to the epic. So for us, it's really, when I say I collect all the bugs in this bucket, it's because we are scheduling one UX depth per milestone. So at some point, our goal is to close that epic, right? But for example, I linked here this bucket, which is bugs to fix. That includes UX depth, UI polish, and general bugs that include UX to the environments. The goal is to close those first and then move to environment, new features. So using labels, yes, we could use labels there, but it doesn't really give us the visualization that we want to just say, these are the items that we are collecting here. They're probably labeled all the same, but it's really just for visualization that, yeah, we prefer.
Yeah, I can get that last question in that sense. if you like attach issues towards that epic, my problem has also been like, hey, this issue might have been part of an addition, like an existing epic. By including it in this
Yeah.
epic, you destroy that connection.
Yeah, then I have to just
again.
reconnect later. I did this when I was collecting the issues for settings UX, and I'm like, well, if you really want this back in a different epic, then put it back. I have this all the time because I work in my UX epic, and then I have like these buckets, right, where Jackie puts 5 issues so that I can work on the UX phase. And then once it's done, I need to find the correct epic and put it back there because, yeah, we need to keep track in a certain way. But GitLab, we need sub epics and we need the ability to have multiple epics per issue. So feature request, that would be perfect.
Thanks. I think the visualization is actually a really good upside. So I'll take that into mind and see what I can make work. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Next item is mine, but it's a read only. So just like give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the issue itself or here comment. And Lori, as a last item that's important, I think to cover for today for sure. Over to you.
Yeah, so it was just, does anybody need me? Can I help? Juan, I saw you put a comment in there for long-term initiatives. Let's chat about that.
Yeah, let's I mean, I'm just gonna verbalize what I said there, but I think that right now runner and testing have a lot of we're building on top of many things from past research, you know, so like we're kind of like refining and like going back and forth with well, we have a lot of like research meat that we're still kind of like grinding, right? But we definitely have like long-term things that we are very unsure about, and we're gonna start doing some wireframing for those things. And I was wondering, yeah, what will be the process for that? Because I'm not even entirely sure that this is problem validation. I think this is just overall discovery. And I was wondering if there's anything in UX research, in the UX research process where you can help us with that or give us guidance on how to explore that.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote there in my comment, not knowing all that, but I suspected that typically if it's something longitudinal, like step 1 builds on step 2, builds on step 3, you'll want to put together like a research plan. And that's different from a project because the plan is overarching all of the things that you think you might need to do in order to be successful. The projects live inside that plan. So each individual research efforts are part of that plan, but they're not the only thing going on, if that makes sense. Like it's like the files you put inside a folder, and the folder is the research plan. So let's talk, you and I, let's actually have a synchronous meeting, Juan, to chat about it.
Okay.
So I can understand what all's going on, and maybe I can help create the plan or help you create the plan to capture it all.
All right, so I'll put something in your calendar.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Last final minute we have, just wanted to say that there is a nice, Juan, do you want to vocalize your point as a 1 minute?
Oh yeah, so we never use that section, but I think that we should use it more because it's interesting. So it's just a read item. So I saw this article where someone is now like criticizing how GitHub is changing things, and like it's very interesting because the way that he perceives GitHub, you know, GitHub seems mostly for people like a social network, like a social layer of code and discovery of solutions and whatnot. And they of course use it as a version control as well. But I don't know, I just kind of thought like the food for thought here is like, if you go and read that, you will realize that GitHub feels a lot like the consumery type of solution of this space, and we feel more like enterprise, like the professional productivity tool. And I was wondering how we can leverage that to make us stronger in everything that we do, you know. That's it. Just read the article.
That's interesting. go and give it a read. All right, I don't want to hold anyone any further because I know that some of us has meetings back to back. Juan,
Yeah, you do.
thanks a lot for great discussions, and yeah, hopefully everyone will have a great day, evening. Yeah, see you soon. Thanks all.